Welcome to another episode of Something Simple and Light with Tolu. In this episode, we're going to be talking about some process improvement methodologies and experience the power of improving processes. Improving processes within an FMCG space, especially in somewhere like Nigeria, where there are lots and lots of opportunities for improvements. Those principles are called Lean and Six Sigma. For Lean is focused on reducing waste, right? Or what the Japanese calls muda, right? And this is one of the ways in which I like to always explain waste is something that is not done right the first time, something that customers are not willing to pay for, right, and doesn't conform to customer expectation. And this is what we call waste. So if a customer does not see it as value adding, no form of transformation has happened on that product, it's probably worse than it was than when we started, right? Or nothing has changed, it's still the same. Then the customer is asking themselves, why should I pay for this? Right? What has changed? If you do not do it well the first time and you have to do it again, right? Then the customer is asking myself, why should I pay for your mistake? You didn't get it right the first time, right? So these are things that Lean is focused on, doing, reducing, and this is what we want to reduce within manufacturing as operations manager. So we want our operations to be as, Lean compliant as possible. And there are several methodologies implemented in Lean. So for instance, you have methodologies around like the 5S, right, which speaks to workplace organization, right, whether sort, setting orders, shine, standardize, sustain, right? For 5S, we have other tools like SMED, that's quick changeover, single minute exchange of die, ensuring that we're able to change from one product to another in the most efficient way possible. And we achieve this, by ensuring that we do things that can happen while production is ongoing. So we have what is called external activities and internal activities. And as much as possible, you want to do activities that are performed while while production is ongoing. So it's not when production stops that you start collecting, the raw materials needed for the next item or collecting the spare parts or tools required for, the changeover. All of that is done in parallel to production so that once production stops, you can quickly do the changeover and then move to the new item. So that's also, another principle for Lean. We have other tools and other things. For instance, we also have the 8 types of waste. If you know those types of waste, you then know that you can avoid them, right? And just off the top of my head, I can mention a couple of them. So you have the waste of transport. That's the unnecessary or excess movements of materials, right? And then you have what is called inventory waste. So we spoke a bit about inventory waste, inventory management, some of the things that you can do, right? Such as, just in time, inventory, and just making sure that you have just what you need and not having more. So you can have excess inventory as a type of waste. You can also have the waste of motion, right? So unnecessary movement of people. So people having to move long distances, move back and forth just to achieve or create value that can be created with less movements, right? With more ergonomic designs in the factory, in the location, in the operations, right? These are some of the things that can happen here in Lean, ensuring that we don't have unnecessary motion, right? And then you have, the waste of waiting. So when you have processes where you have long queues and you have bottlenecks where people are just waiting, whether because the process is set up in such a way where you deal with issues in batches. So until that batch is complete, for instance, it cannot move to the next stage of the process. That can cause unnecessary waiting. In fact, for me personally, that's probably one of the most easy way to frustrate me in a business when I have to wait long times, right? Why wait when you can have proper, planning, scheduling? People don't have to be there if they are not ready, right? When you're ready for me, I come and, you sort me out versus coming to sit down there and wait and wait and wait. That's not something, operations managers should be doing for their customers, making them wait unnecessarily, right? And then you have the waste of overproduction, producing more than is required. You have the waste of overprocessing, putting more than is required. The customer is asking for, jollof rice and fish, and then you're putting other things. There's this joke that I hear about if you go to a barbing salon, that's where you cut your hair, right? If you start seeing ring lights and they start giving you wine to drink, you should start asking questions. How much is it going to cost me to cut my hair? Because if I start seeing over processing or more things that I need, for me. So if personally, all I just want is just to have a good haircut. I'm not really concerned about drinking champagne, having ring lights on my neck, and all those paparazzi. Then for me, that's a waste, because I'm not going to pay you 100K to cut my hair, 100K naira. Because you are putting more things than I want. Maybe there are other customers that are interested, but I'm not your customer, right? As an example. And that's just, how you want to think about the waste of over processing, doing more than is required, right? And then you have the waste of defects. So if you don't get it right the first time, the product is defective, right? And for some cases, the products cannot even be reworked. You cannot repair it. So you'll probably have to discard it and then produce another one. And that's going to significantly eat out of your bottom line, because the customer is not going to pay you twice, right? Because you didn't get it right the first time does not mean that I will now pay you a second time to get it right. So I'm still going to pay you once, right? As an example. So these are things that you want to, be very careful around, from a lean perspective. And the final part of this 8 types of lean, or 8 types of waste in lean, is skills, right? That's not utilizing the skills of your workforce, of your team members, right? Not ensuring that you have the right people in the right places doing the right things, right? So if you don't have round pegs in round holes, you're not getting the best, right, out of them. And that's going to be a waste from an organizational standpoint, right? And then even from a lean perspective, we have what is called employee-driven initiatives, right? Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. And these are, initiatives that, they are simple to implement. They are driven by employees. They come up with ideas based on the daily work that they do, and they are able to, just continuously make their work better. And we're beginning to see organizations move in that direction and get, significant change over a period of time, right? And this is very different from the overall, organizational transformation that is usually breakthrough transformation, right? That is massive change, right? But we're even talking about the daily change, right? The 1% movement, the gradual improvement, the continuous improvement that consistently happens. And then over time, you have a process that is very efficient, right? And all of that. So that's something that could also, be implemented from a lean perspective, right? Let's switch over to Six Sigma, right? From Six Sigma point of view, Six Sigma is very particular around variation. So you do not want to have more variation than is required, right? And we typically will have some sort of tolerance, right? Plus or minus a certain number, right? And it's because of, this variation mindset, or this tolerance, this upper limit, lower limits, that makes Six Sigma heavily dependent on data. It's a very data-driven approach. So there's a lot of statistics, there's a lot of numbers. These are things that, are based on actual data, right? And this could be a challenge, right, in implementing Six Sigma. If you're an organization that is not heavy on data, you're not tracking your numbers, it becomes very difficult to implement Six Sigma, because when you even think about it, the Six Sigma framework, or the approach, right, for Six Sigma is called DMAIC, right? It's an acronym, DMAIC, right? And I'm just going to run you quickly through what that stands for. So D stands for define. So the framework expects that you define the problem, you define what is causing this variation, whatever it is, in such a clear and articulate manner, right? And then after you define this, you now measure. So you go ahead to measure, okay, let me see what the actual numbers are. Remember what I said about it being very data driven, right? So you measure to see what these numbers are. And then once you do that measurement, we analyze, right? So we do have some form of analysis on these numbers, right? So understand what is the root cause, what is driving this problem, to be able to narrow down on, what are the drivers for this problem that we measured, right, in our analysis. Based on this analysis, you can now improve. That's your I, right? So you can come up with plans to say, based on this, I need to do this, I need to change this, I need to change this process, I need to transform this particular step, I need to remove this, add this, eliminate this, and all of that. And based on these improvements, you now start putting controls in place to make sure that these improvements are sustained over a period of time. And then you rinse and repeat, right? It's a circle. So I define again, I measure, I analyze, I improve, I control. So the Six Sigma framework, using this DMIC circle, ensures that you are constantly on top of things, from a data-driven perspective, right? You have the numbers, you measure, you see that based on the improvements you've made, are we beginning to see changes, right? And I give you an example. So if I'm tracking customer complaints, as an example, I had a specific number of customer complaints in the last quarter, right, based on the improvements that I've made, based on the analysis that was done, and I narrowed down to a couple, of root causes. Am I getting significant improvements in my, customer satisfaction? Do I have less complaints than I have now than I used to have? Right, these are things that Six Sigma will be able to track, right? So by the time you get to control, and I'm monitoring my process by what we call by using statistical process control charts, right? I have what is called a common cause or a special cause, and I'm looking at all of this and asking myself, is this process still in control? Are we still within my tolerance? Am I still within customers' expectation, right? So I listen to the voice of the customer. The customer is asking for a certain quantity or volume or parameter, and I'm asking myself, is the process able to meet that standard, right? Based on all of this and more, I can begin to say my process is capable, is not capable, and I need to make certain adjustments here and there to be able to make the customer happy, right? So all of this can be brought together, whether Lean or Six Sigma. We can integrate all these approaches together to have what is called the Lean Six Sigma approach. And this is such a critical aspect of manufacturing, FMCG, and way more even critical in the context of the Nigerian market, because half the time, in fact, most of the time, right, there's always so much opportunities to improve, your processes and get more value for your customers, and your customers are able to, get value for money. You become very competitive, right? And these are things that are literally within your control from an organizational standpoint. All right, so when we mix all that we've heard so far in previous episodes, things that are external, and now we're talking about some of the internal things that we can begin to do, you can begin to see how all of this can make you an effective operations manager within FMCG. All right, till I come your way next time, see you in the next episode. Keep transforming, keep doing your work, and see you at the top. All right, awesome.